Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Coffee with Coaches podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Stafford, in case you were curious. And today I have with me Chris Herndon. Chris is a co-founder and personal growth coach at Lucidly, a tech-enabled coaching service that helps SMBs build engaged and thriving teams. He's also a host of the Future Ready HR podcast, a member of the Forbes Coaching Council, and a wilderness survival enthusiast, which we were having a conversation before I hit record. We could talk about that alone for hours. However, we'll keep it focused on coaching with maybe some sprinkling of some lessons from wilderness survival as we go. Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Let's get started with how you got your start. How did you become a coach? And this kind of has multiple answers. Like, what prompted you to realize maybe that you were a coach already and then just start doing it professionally? And then how did you start your coaching business?
Cool. Yeah. So my origin story. I joke around and I say that I've always been a coach, and that's not tongue in cheek. It's actually, I would say it's real, because my dad was my coach for every sport, soccer, baseball, basketball. And so he was kind of my model for how to help people become the best version of themselves, or how to improve, or how to get better at something. And that's like the first tangible experience I had of coaching. And so this guy that I look up to, my dad, I saw how he spoke to my teammates at the time. And so I sort of developed, this is how I developed how I interacted with other people. So I actually don't know how to not like relate to people in this way, where it's like I see people and their potential and I help them gain new insights and perspectives and think about ways to improve their situation, their circumstance, whether it's now career related or relationship related or anything to do with their well-being or their personal growth. I mean, now it's just, I found a career that actually does that. And I learned about it. Fast forward to graduate school. Well, actually, let me go back a little bit. In my first professional job, my first white collar job, I wore, suit and tie to work. And I was the guy that people would like trap by the water cooler. Like they would sort of trap me and they would be sharing their whole life story and their challenges and what they're working through. And they knew that I had previously been a personal trainer. And so they would always ask me, like, what do you think about this? Like, should I try this, diet or nutrition plan or this exercise routine? But really at the end of the day, it was all coaching. I mean, it just looked a little bit different, sounded a little bit different. And I did learn in graduate school when I was getting my MBA at Portland State. Shout out to P-Town. I learned about executive coaching, and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's an industry. And so I started actually interviewing coaches, and the coaches that I was meeting were, twice my age, riding off into the sunset in their career, wanting to give back to others that were maybe developing as leaders, or how to give feedback, or that sort of thing. And I had this whole plan. Plans were silly. So I was going to become a consultant in change management, because I saw how organizations really struggled with helping their people move through change, whether it's new initiatives or new technology or whatever. And so I wanted to help people work through change, because I had already been, in different sort of careers in my life, been helping people create change in their lives. And and then after being consultant for 5 years, I was going to become an executive coach when my hair was starting to turn gray, which just for the record, I got a few gray hairs. Yeah. Can't really see them now, but I do have some gray hairs. I got
the salt and pepper going pretty clearly.
That looks good. Looks good, Kevin. Looks good on you, man.
Thank you.
So after grad school, I was also doing some networking at the time, and I met a gentleman. His name is Carl Casanova. Great name, just great name. And he is a master certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. And he was like, Chris, he's like, you're a coach. He's like, I can tell. He's like, you should come to, get certified, through my program. And I was like, well, I'm just, I'm going to be graduating. It seems like it's kind of out of my budget right now. I just spent 60 grand for having some letters after my name. And he's like, you know what? I'll waive it. We'll give you a scholarship. And so I was like, sweet. So I joined his program, and man, I mean, the first day was just like speaking to my soul, right? It was this, like, this is this is who I am. This is who I've been my whole life. And now there's an actual place to kind of direct my energy. And that began my coaching journey of learning the trade, the craft, the processes, the flow of how to actually have conversations in a way that was taking my natural ability and like now actually putting some form structure around it. So let's see, and then you had asked about sort of how I'd actually gotten started with coaching, like maybe the business or how that launched. Well, so I accomplished my goal of becoming a consultant. So I got hired as a change management consultant, and again, things don't happen as planned. I got laid off a year later. I got laid off, which was super hard, super challenging, but also at the same time, such a gift. And at that point I was, almost a year into my coach certification program. And so I kind of had a choice. Well, it's like I could find another consulting gig. I could pivot and like get into politics, or I could launch my coaching practice. And I decided to launch my coaching practice because why not? So that was 2018. So I've been coaching professionally ever since.
Awesome. I love there's this progression basically as you were talking, and you're doing a great job of like basically charting your path. I could almost hear like a blip, like a signal strength getting louder and louder and louder as you got understanding naturally who you were, like basically from birth. It was in your blood to be a coach, but getting closer and closer to being able to put that into action. And I'm almost hearing like this little signal, like this radar as you're talking, like this little blip. And it's getting like faster and faster and faster as each step in your process, whether planned or very unplanned, gets you closer to that realization. I love the way you described that moment when your first day getting through the ICF coaching certification, where you almost realized that you had come home in a way. I got that feeling totally. Of like I've come home. Like that was the word that popped into my head when you.
I got chills running down my body just even hearing you say that. Yes, absolutely.
And that's just like it's simultaneously your whole life had been leading up to that point, and your whole life began right there. I love those moments where it's the complete end of one thing and the complete beginning of the next thing, and that realization that it's all just the same journey. It's like it's such a powerful moment. And quite frankly, that comes through in your story. I got getting a little chills thinking about it myself too.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's talk about where you're at now. I feel like I want to like talk about. I want to spend hours talking about your personal story. There's so many like great tidbits in there, but let's talk about what you're doing right now with Lucidly in particular.
Yeah. So I want to share kind of even how it came to be. So in my coaching journey, one of the things like building your own coaching practice, from scratch is a challenge. And I will say it's like you get all your clients, and then now you have clients, you're like, great. And then it's like, oh, I have to keep this sort of sales and marketing thing going. And, there's now all sorts of programs and things that can help you do that. But one of the ways that I kind of filled out my coaching practice was I joined a coaching company, Keller Williams MAPS organization. MAPS stands for Mega Achievement Productivity Systems. Boom. And, I got really good at coaching. I got a lot of hours in coaching, thousands of hours over a couple year period, where we would the sessions were 30 minutes long. And so previously my sessions would be anywhere from an hour to 90 minutes with clients. Now shaving that down to 30 minutes. And I learned how to get to the roots of what's going on very quickly with somebody in a conversation in 30 minutes. And then, to help them shift perspective, reframe something, come up with a solution, and then move on. And so it was very, very fast paced. We joked around that we were the Navy SEALs of coaches because of that. It's like drop in, boom, hit the round, and something, we're getting to the solution pretty quickly. Appreciated that opportunity. Was with an amazing organization that really invested in their coaches. So I really appreciated that. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do coaching company different. And so I had that intention, and I started creating a plan. And so, I'm creating this whole plan on this coaching company, and here's our values, and here's our mission and our vision. And, this is the kind of coaches that we want to attract, and these are the types of clients that we want to work with. And I actually started going through the process of hiring coaches, probably a little bit too preemptively. really that's one of the challenges that most coaches are going to face is like actually the sales and marketing piece, to actually finding clients and retaining them and then finding new. And so I was bringing on coaches that I didn't really necessarily have clients for, or the time to actually build this thing, because I was still a part of MAPS and I was still, doing my own coaching. And so I basically put that whole business plan on the shelf. Fast forward maybe a year, and I love writing. I love sharing, what I'm experiencing, whether it's through what I'm learning in wilderness survival, or through hunting, or through fishing, or through a conversation that I had with a friend. I love sharing those experiences, and I had been sharing it with my email list, my network. And an old mentor of mine had shared one of my articles with a friend of his. His name is Will Lanfuso, and Will and I got together. And what Will was working on at the time was kind of like the beginning stages of Lucidly, and Lucidly really was aimed at helping people get more out of life. And so we came together, myself, him, Doug, he had some other people involved, and we sort of launched Lucidly. And now we've been at it for 3 years. And Lucidly, yeah, it's crazy. So all of a sudden that year, after all that whole planning that I did put into work about creating this coaching company, fast forward a year, and now here I am. Like, I'm building a coaching company with some other folks. And it's just funny how things don't go as planned, but they go exactly how they're supposed to. I can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, the plan's almost the vehicle by which something gets where it wants to go. It's like the way, like I talked about, the way my brain works in analogies constantly. I think about the primal stuff. Like, I think about the fire, and the fire is what's produced. The wood gets burned, the wood's consumed. It'll fall the way it falls, but you build it right. It doesn't necessarily go the way you plan, but you get that fire. And right. It's just like with a river, where it's like, the water will flow where it needs to flow based on the circumstances. You might have a good idea of how that's going to go, but you also might not have a great idea of how it's going to go. But if you follow the water, you will get to where you need to go.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes, totally. And so it's been a crazy journey. So I had actually kind of pivoted away from doing some of the coaching to wearing more of an executive hat. So helping actually, grow our team of coaches, and to be thinking through what our programs are. And yes, I was still doing group coaching and some one-on-one coaching, but I was sort of moving away from that to a different hat. Yeah. And how we've been growing the business is really continuing to focus, focus, like even more narrow on industries. So we target professional services, small mid-sized businesses. And we're tackling two issues, namely, one is the employee engagement challenge. So how do we engage a remote workplace, remote workforce? And then how do we retain our people during this time of the, quote unquote, great resignation, which I like to reframe. And I've heard other people reframe, so I'm borrowing this term from them. It's the great awakening, right? People want to be more engaged. They want to have more impact. They want to have greater fulfillment, meaning, purpose in their work. And shocking, right? It's like, this is what we spend most of our time doing, so we might as well enjoy it. And
absolutely,
fairly recently, like within the last couple months, actually, I've gone through somewhat of a midlife crisis. And going back, it's a joke. It could be worse or better depending on your circumstance, but I was sort of questioning what I was doing, right? Like many of us are during this time. And I realized that I was kind of getting away from my core, kind of wearing this executive hat and kind of getting away from the deep, meaningful, transformative work that I've done on an individual basis up until this point. And for me, I've made a recent pivot, still within Lucidly, to really focusing on one-on-one work within the kind of personal growth realm, rather than like maybe core business skills and leadership training and management training. It's like pivoting, going back to kind of my roots. And that's my sweet spot. And it's having conversations like this, Kevin, and that hence the podcast. So it's like coming back home. It's just like sometimes we're going down that river that you were speaking of, and sometimes we get trapped in little eddies, right? And we have to go through that experience at least I know for myself, so that I can relate to other people that might be going through their own eddies, or they might go down this own side creek, to help them get back in touch with, again, their core, their root, what matters to them, what's fulfilling and meaningful.
Yeah. Home isn't the place that you stay all the time. Pandemic notwithstanding, I know it's a little bit close to home right now, but home isn't the place you stay all the time. Home is the place you always come back to.
Good. Yeah.
And that to me, it's like that and along with some wisdom passed down to me from some good people I met along the way has really helped me to understand that it's an active process of identification. Like you never really lose your home, but you can lose your way. You can get lost when you're out there in your eddies and your swirls, tracking down whatever it is you're tracking down, doing the things that you know you want to do, that is good for you to do. But you always come back home. There's always that urge to come back home, and realizing that that's an active identification. And then, like, anytime I get a little far away from it, I could tell. My body tells me. Like, you feel it in your chest, you feel it in your stomach, that something just feels a little bit off. And if you let yourself ask the questions, be like, so have I strayed a little too far away from home? Should I go back, recharge a little bit at my home? Metaphorical in this case, sometimes literal, depending on how much you travel for your business. Totally. It's just such a powerful realization. And it really is. It's at the heart. It's clearly at the heart of everything you do. And I love hearing that you're still out there doing what needs to be done, wearing the hats that need to be worn, but also staying very grounded and returning home when you know you need to. I don't know. I think I'm a little inspired. That's why I'm like kind of coming short, lost for words, but
you nailed it, man. I think there's something like you mentioned something like my body tells me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, am I stressed? Am I feeling burned out? And am I triggered more easily? Like, there's all these signs, right? Is my energy lower, or my vitality? Does it feel lower? Like, our body tells us. And the question is, are we asking the right questions? Are we paying attention, or are we just going to the next thing? Right? Do we allow enough space for ourselves to actually feel what's present? And when we do, when we get curious, it can be very illuminating and lead to insights, clarity. For me, it was like, when I say midlife crisis, it was confusing. It was frustrating. I was like questioning a lot, and it was sort of like, oh my gosh. But ultimately now, like, with having this clarity and having conversations with my co-founders, and I'm back in touch with that energy that is always there. And it's like this very heart open, very, like, it feels very flowy. Like, I feel like more alive. I feel more excitement. I feel more motivation than I have maybe in some previous months. And so I think they're all signs. The body tells us, the body knows. So great. I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, of course. Quite frankly, I could tell I could talk with you all day. Like, I can do this. We can cut a 6-hour podcast. It'd be totally great. Everyone would listen. I would love this, but I should get us out of here with, where can people find you? And when I ask that, that's usually kind of a general question, but like, where do you like to engage with people? Like, most people I talk to have a preferred social media where it's like, that's what they like to have conversations and connect. Obviously there'll be a website, and, you can be reached out to there. Maybe you prefer email. I don't know. So, like, basically, how can people get a little taste of what I've just gotten to feast on in the last half hour?
Yeah. I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. Yeah. Look up Chris Herndon, and you'll see me with, I think it says entrepreneur, Forbes Coaching Council, and personal growth coach. Yep. So that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. I almost feel bad first hitting the stop button on the record. Chris, thank you so much for talking with me on the podcast today. And thank you so much for talking to me in general. Like, I'm going to keep you on. Sorry, listeners. I'm going to keep him on for a few more minutes after this. So you'll just have to wonder what we're talking about. But thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. Man.
Yeah, I know it's been fun. Kevin. Thanks.
And to the audience, we will talk to you again real soon.